This is the second step of the Eightfold Path, assembling evidence. So okay, you defined your problem. Now you got to figure out how to get some information about that problem. That's scary. There's just a world of stuff I could get. Do I sit down and read the Encyclopedia Britannica, or go to Wikipedia and read everything I can there?
Yeah, the internet has done two things here. It's made assembling evidence a lot easier, but it's also presenting a peril, which is that you could be overwhelmed in this ocean of I'd not call it evidence exactly, I call it data. You know, articles and tables and census reports, what have you. So you know, one of the sort of attitudes about evidence collection that you should really get into your bones is it's costly to assemble evidence, and you should treat it like any other kind of costly activity, evaluate it compared to benefits. So how is the benefit of the next piece of evidence going to really, is it going to help you? In what way? Be very clear about this and ask yourself hard questions. And especially with there's some kinds of evidence collection that are very expensive, surveys, sometimes interviews. Is that cost going to be worth it? What do you expect to get out of this? You know?
Well, and also you're saying something that the book makes very clear, which is that there's a difference between data and information and evidence, and that what you ultimately want is evidence, but getting from data to evidence is not a simple thing to do. So describe those distinctions.
Data is just a bunch of facts. It's what is out in the world. It's just raw, undigested facts, okay? Information is data that you can put into categories so that you can get meaning out of the data by comparing and contrasting and putting next to and so forth. Evidence processes it a little further. It's information that you can use to bring to bear on your thinking, on decision making, what you can use to actually guide action. Now, there's a huge gulf between raw data and evidence that's really tailored, customized to your action and decision needs. And you have to go through a lot of steps to do it. I would say most people get involved in data collection and think that if they do that, everything will work out. Well, you know, it won't.
And you mentioned, for example, that sometimes what happens is clients say, gee, we should do a survey here, because somehow that seems like you're doing something and learning things. But surveys can be complicated to design and difficult to administer, and then you have to process all the data you've got to make it into information and then make it into evidence. That's a lot of steps and a lot of work.
You're right, and you know, I'd say you, having been the head of the Survey Research Center, know this about surveys for sure. Bureaucrats you could talk to, or you know that their file cases are full of reports from the field that arrive at headquarters that nobody ever looks at. And you know, to the headquarters people who asked for the reports, it was free to them, but it wasn't free to the people down there. And so no surprise, people over ask. You know, and data collection and reporting seems to have a kind of legitimation, because isn't that all part of accountability, and don't we believe in that? And it also, and this is the dangerous thing, has a kind of scientific, I should say scientistic patina that makes it obviously appealing. And plus, as you say, if you're busy collecting data, you know, you look like you're earning your keep.
Well, the Soviet bureaucracy was infamous for collecting enormous amounts of data that nobody ever actually processed and nobody ever turned into evidence, and the system didn't work particularly well. But they collected a lot of data and information.
Yeah, well, I have a kind of economics formula for this problem. The product of good policy analysis comes from two inputs: thinking and empirical work. Usually the thinking is really the hard and important part, but it gets pushed out sometimes by people running around being busy.
How would you approach a problem if somebody gave you 48 hours to look at some particular topic? what kinds of sources would you look at and how would you proceed?
Well, I say there's two big classes of search possibilities. One is stuff that's out there on the internet or in journals, ideas, or by think tanks that have written reports, or by government agencies. So the internet, your computer is your window into all that. That's great. But the other one is interviewing. You know, sometimes if you don't have a lot of time, you with a little luck, this does require some luck and some skill, you could perhaps track down somebody out there in the world who would just love, who knows a lot about the subject and who would love to tell you about it. I always tell students that one really important resource on the interview side, personal sources, is people who are staff, high up staff, to advocacy organizations and trade organizations. They're not in government. They don't have the responsibility to be neutral and open-minded, but they know a lot. And they have a point of view, and they are paid and eager to share this with you. Now, of course, you have to be extremely careful in evaluating all that, so you want to go to somebody, an advocacy organization on the other side as well. Okay, so...
And the interesting thing is that I think all of us are scared to pick up the phone and call important people. But what you're saying is these important people want to talk to you because they want to help you figure out the answer. They have their own notions of what that should be. But if you're careful, you could really use that information in very useful ways.
Yeah, you're right. Now, the other type of interview subject that is like the advocacy staff is government people, but people who are sort of middle or just above middle, who know a lot, they've been on there a long time, and they just, nobody has appreciated their work, ever. And here you are, you know, all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and you're ready to sit for an hour or two and have them spill their guts out. They are happy to do that. Now, for that kind of situation, you have to know how to conduct an interview so that it doesn't go too far off track, and et cetera, et cetera.
But, so there are sources that you can get quickly to do this. So that's the end of assembling evidence, and we're going to go out to the third step.